Welcome to Close Up on America's Business, where business, finance, and technology intersect. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with the always bubbly and energetic Eve Nasby. And from the Disabled Business Persons Association, Mr. Urban Miyares. Our goal on Close Up is to focus on how business, finance, and technology play into our everyday business lives and make our communities a better place. We have a great show, so let's get started. Welcome, guys.
Awesome.
We're back.
It's great to be back.
We
Thank you so
here.
much.
Yes.
I guess we didn't suck the first time. But it's back.
You just gotta love that positive mental attitude, okay?
I love it.
When I was back playing football, that was what my coaches always did. They always said PMA, positive mental attitude, just before they whacked us in the back of the head. Anyway, well, we are back. What is going on in the business world today? Any great experiences out there?
Urban.
One thing I'm excited about, and this is something I've been advocating since the 1980s, Department of Veterans Affairs has collaborated with the Small Business Administration to provide services for disabled veterans who are interested in starting or are already in business.
What are they doing specifically?
Well, they're just providing counseling. Before it was just something on the books. But when someone with a disability came in, especially if it was a significant disability where assistive technology was needed, an example, a veteran that comes in who's deaf or hard of hearing, they really couldn't provide. They give them the literature and send them out. But now they have agreed to spend more time with the veteran and help them, and of course make some of their programs more accessible, mainly their loan guarantee programs, which we did not have before.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, years ago, we used to have a handicap assistance loan, which is still on the books. But under the Clinton administration, 1996, I believe, was the last loan made. And that was a wonderful loan, a very positive loan, one of the few, if not the only loans that the SBA did. And that was a direct loan from Congress through the SBA, not a loan guarantee, with a 3% interest rate at the time. And that had the highest closure rate and the lowest delinquency rate of any SBA loan program on the books at that time. It's just exciting to see how so many things that myself and so many other advocates around the country have been doing for the disabled in business are now starting to come about. I find it exciting, even though I may have had only a small part of it. At least get the ball rolling, and it's just exciting for me on that area.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the great things about, you know, all the efforts that you put in from Disabled Business Persons Association and what have you, I think it's great because we still have laws in place that allow advantages to hire veterans, hire disabled, what have you. You know, my guess is, you know, I know, Eve, we talked last week about all the work opportunity tax credit programs for hiring a veteran. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? And I'm curious if there's anything out there like that which is advantageous for a disabled vet.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the work opportunity tax credits, for those who didn't hear last week, you can get up to a $9,600 tax credit for hiring a veteran. But it also applies to people who are on food stamps. There's a plethora of triggers for employers who don't really realize this, that you can actually get tax credits on folks. And so I met with somebody a few months ago, Barry, that owned their own staffing agency, and they tried this, and in the first month they realized $200,000 in tax credits, and it's free money. So they paid the third party that we work with about 20%, and they got to keep the rest. Free money. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah.
And don't forget, they also, if they have to make an accommodation, that's additional.
Yes. Yeah. And so you talked, Urban, about a truck driver who's profoundly deaf that just landed a job. Was that with the assistance of our government with the new regulations they're passing, or how did that work?
He passed a truck driving school, profoundly deaf, and was issued a standard commercial license like any trucker.
That's awesome.
And I posted that on the Facebook page for
that's great.
The organization.
You know, one of the things that I'm looking at is, you know, Eve, I know that there's two different kind of firms out there. You know, if we're talking to a business owner now who's looking for hiring practices, getting tax credits if he finds the right person in the right way. But there's two different ways to do it. You know, firms like you're talking about that work on a contingency, you know, that's when you really have a lot of employees. There's a lot of play in there. But there's also for the smaller and the medium-sized companies, we work with local firms here, CPA firms, that specialize in tax credits. And one of the, I guess the key element that I want to put into this conversation is not all accounting firms or CPAs or anybody playing into the business tax environment, not all of them understand the tax credit programs. It's quite a specialty.
Yeah, and this company, this temp agency, they've not been around for just a few years. They've been around for a long time. And they have somebody that's doing their taxes and has been doing their taxes for a long time, but never did that tax firm ever say, hey guys, you could qualify for tax credits, and they got back, just under $200,000.
Yeah, and Barry, you're right, because most small or even micro businesses don't realize that. They say, well, I'm not in the research business. I don't do any. You own restaurants? Do you do retail sales even?
Right.
Even retail sales, depending on what you do, the activity that you do every day could be an additional tax benefit to you.
I'll tell you what, the one thing that I want to explain to everybody on the air here is, a tax credit is not just a tax deduction. If you take a tax deduction, that lowers your income. If you take a tax credit, whether you take it for work opportunity tax credit, whether you get one for installing solar on your house, whether you get one for buying an electric car, whatever it is, that's cash in your pocket. So if you get a $1,000 tax credit, that offsets $1,000 worth of taxes due. It's a dollar for dollar credit. So it's a fabulous thing. And going back to the tax advisors out there in the world today, the issue is that a typical CPA firm is hired, and you pay for their services pretty much to organize your taxes, put the right things in play, do a little bit of planning with what you have available to you. They're not trained to go out and do the tax credit programs. They don't get paid for that. Right. They don't get that. That's a whole separate level of education.
Yeah, and those third parties, there's good ones out there. For those who are interested, you can go on to my website, infused.work. It's infused.work, and you just click on it, and I will help you find those free tax credits. This third party does all of your administrative work for you. All you do is sit back and receive the money.
So it's called free money.
Free money, yeah, I love that part.
I like that. So you're listening to Close Up on America's Business, where business, finance, and technology meet. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-hosts, Eve Nasby and Urban Miyares. And if you want to appear on our show, whether it's remotely or actually come into our studio here, we invite you to do that. Just email me at bwaxler@barrywaxler.com. Interesting, we get into the tax credits early on in the show, but that to me, that's exciting.
Right.
I know most people want to get away from the books as fast as they can, but you know what? One of the great concepts that drives the financial service industry, you know what that is?
What? Money.
Close. You're halfway there. Okay. It's free money.
Yeah.
How do we find free money? Now, government puts out many different programs for those who need money, and they put out programs to incentivize those that have the money that can help others.
Yep.
Okay? It's a fabulous thing.
And the WOTC tax credit was intentionally created by our government for people to discriminate towards a certain group of people. And the veterans are one of those group of people. And come on, it's free money. Why wouldn't you do this?
Right.
I think it's just ignorance on the part of small business owners, where your biggest expense are going to be your employees. So if you can get up to a $9,600 tax credit on an employee, why not? And if you don't specialize in identifying talent for your organization, which most companies don't, you make bad hires. I mean, I'm probably talking to people right now who are rolling their eyes thinking this person that they hired was going to be all that in a bag of chips. And weeks into it, they're stealing money or they're not showing up. It's just a nightmare. And so sometimes that's the biggest pain point with organizations. Yeah. Now you're spending money, and now you need to recoup that money in the tax credits. It's a great way to do that.
Well, I want to share an idea with you.
All right.
Okay. I love this idea, and I loved it back when we were doing the regular radio show. The idea is that what I would like to do is start bringing both veteran and non-veteran, prospective employees on the show. Give them time to create a 5-minute interview. What's their business all about, or their employability? What's it all about? Okay, give them a few minutes to do that. And while we're there, if they happen to be a veteran or some other cause that allows them to generate a tax credit for the business, I just ask you this. If you are the employer and you have two people you're looking at and you think they're fairly equal as to who's going to get that job, but one says, I'll give you $10,000 if you hire me, and the other says, I can't give you anything.
Right.
Where are you going to go?
That's exactly why our government created that. That's exactly why they did that. They want you to discriminate against that, which is kind of a funny way to think about it.
And so much of that is relative to the veteran community out there. So much, if so much is relative to the veteran community, I got to tell you, I'm going to, and Eve, you have the experience here, not me, but I'm going to say that most veterans have no idea that this is available.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. And it's kind of fun to walk in to an employer and say, hey, Urban, you hire me, and I come with a $5,000 tax credit. So, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you don't need a tax credit.
No, you don't hire me anymore. All right, awesome. Thank you.
One of the things that really upsets me related to the disabled and employment, or all people with disabilities, is that the government statistics, what they publish, often do not include those with disabilities in their statistics, such as the unemployment rate for veterans is at its lowest, and well, that's not including disabled veterans.
Interesting.
Disabled veterans, the unemployment rate, especially severely disabled veterans, I would guess is above 50 or 60%.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. That's
amazing. Blinded veterans, it has to be 90, 95%.
Yeah.
So it's don't always believe the statistics you hear and read. I believe that the government often structures these statistics for their benefit,
right?
And it gets a little frustrating when especially when you go in and you talk to someone and you might have veterans with a hidden 10% or 0% disability.
Right.
PTSD is an example. Could be 0% disability.
Right.
They're classified as disabled. And you go in and the employer says, well, it's why should I hire a veteran? They're all employed already. Look at the government, what they say.
Right.
And it's not exactly true.
I think there's a statistic, too, that gets it goes unnoticed, and that's not that people are being employed when they're veterans, is being underemployed when they're veterans. Oftentimes when the veterans get out, they'll take anything, and that means $10,000, $1,000 in pay less than what they should be asking for because they don't know their value, so they're willing to take anything.
And they're scared to come up to somebody like you and say, what can you do for me? Because I think one of the images out there, I mean, we all have our own image in our business, and in my business, people look at me and they say, well, you know what? I mean, you only deal with $100 million life insurance policies or whatever.
Right.
And, I deal with everybody.
Right.
My job is to fix those problems. And when they come to you, Eve, they look at you and they say, I mean, she doesn't have time for little old me. I'm just this person that's trying to make it. That's what you're all about.
Right.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit real quick before we go to break on what you can do for somebody looking for work.
Sure. So, especially persons with disabilities, I think oftentimes companies overlook the fact that they can work from home. So we had a company call 2 years ago, and they needed 1,500 customer service people. And the thought is, well, let's get all these customer service people to work in a call center, in a hard, brick and mortar. But guess what? They can work from home. Those phone calls can come right into them, so they don't have to commute. They can work from home. So think about that.
That's where technology comes into play, because
Absolutely.
They didn't used to be able to do that. Now your phone can ring whenever a customer's calling in on an 800 line somewhere else. It's great.
So what we can do for people is we don't specialize in redoing your resume, but we can help you redo a resume for a position. We just simply send you out to the companies that we feel that you're qualified for when they have openings, and we make the match.
Great. That's fabulous. Well, you know what? I think we have a surprise coming in here shortly, right after the break.
I can't wait.
Yep. So this is Close Up on America's Business, where business, finance, and technology meet. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-hosts Eve Nasby and Urban Miyares. We'll be right back after this short break. We are back. Again, I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with the always bubbly and energetic Eve Nasby and the always incredible Urban Miyares. And we have a little surprise come in today, which
Love
is
our
a
surprises.
good thing.
Yes.
We all have our people that are in our lives or in our business lives that have inspired us to do different things and have just, connected with so many things in our life, right? So I'd like to introduce from the group of companies, which I'll let him do his own introduction because he has too many companies to introduce. But welcome, Mr. Joe Strazzeri.
Good morning.
So, how you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Great. Well, I asked Joe to sit in with us because he's got some events coming up that I think are really, really helpful for our audience, which is, targeting the small business owner. Obviously, we do a lot of work with the employees too, but if business owners grasp onto some of the things that we do, I think it'll help out the community in a great way. So, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you are, who you are, what you do, and some of the events that are coming up. We can get into those, but tell our listeners a little bit more about what you do.
Well, sure. We're part of a platform, a Care to Know set of resources. We've realized that in today's marketplace, we teach over 300 programs a year, mostly to successful families and business owners. And something that we notice out in that marketplace is, with the information age that we have, with the ability to type on that phone in front of you or that pad or the computer, most people gather up about 50 to 70% of the data, and they say, aha, bingo, I've got a solution to my problem.
Yeah.
And off they go, run off to a solution. And within 2 to 5 years, that solution, more often than not, turns out to be a disaster. And you either get to find out before it turns out badly and fix it, or find out afterwards. We know that the magic and nuance exists in the last 10%. That last 10% of research, the last 10% of a conversation, you move away from designing an answer to it becoming obvious. So our best client relationships and our best advisors relationships, like with you, are those advisors and clients that know that they care to know the balance or the totality of their circumstance, because that magic and nuance in that last 10% helps. There are 3 things you could identify us with. One, we build our relationships gift by gift. So often we may sit with somebody and not end up working with them, but we gave them the gift of pause or an insight to their situation. We ask questions to the left and to the right of their situation, and they say, wait a minute, I'm thinking about the wrong problem. And that insight has them think in a different way. Or it's an introduction. Maybe it's an introduction to somebody like Eve. They just didn't understand that there was another option. And by that simple introduction to somebody else, their problem really wasn't a problem. Or again, they were working on the wrong thing. If you were to ask about our counselors, the commonality between all the different 4 brands is that they all help advisors and clients see past the line. So many times in life we think up to a problem but not through it, where the subject matter itself becomes irritating. We help people think through a problem, and in that, they may look back and they say, I understand it now, and I don't like my solutions, but I can choose one because I now understand the last 10%, and I understand what the options were, and I do it.
Right. Well, Joe, one of the things that I've experienced over the years working with you is Joe is a master at taking something complicated and making it simple. And that's got to be one of the most important things, because you go into every environment, whether you go talk to a CPA, you talk to an attorney, you talk to insurance, you talk to anybody in financial services, and it seems like they went to a school completely foreign to you. The language is so different. Yet every time I sit with Joe and I bring a client or what have you, and I'm just literally amazed at how he can make everything simple. So
I think, Barry, though I appreciate the compliment, I don't know if we necessarily make it simple. I think it was simple to start with. Other people have added so much language around it,
right,
and so much emotion around that language, that they've made something simple more complicated.
Right.
So, though I appreciate that we make it simple, I think it was simple when they walked in. We just get to point out to somebody that the extra language that they put on it, the extra thought, the extra emotion, isn't necessarily true. And as soon as they realize that, they lean back and say, whoa, you mean it's that simple? It can't. Joe, it can't be that simple. If it was that simple, I should have figured that out a long time ago. And I said, well, no, you've got extra language or extra thought or extra emotion around it. Here are the basics of it. Which would you like to do? It empowers somebody to say, I now understand my options, and off I go. It's also a matter of who you collaborate with. We do that on 4 different platforms. As you know, we have an educational in Southern California that puts on over 300 programs a year between advisors and clients.
Wow.
And that's on wealth and tax and insurance and legal and the balance of those subjects around it. It also, that platform supports 3 other firms, 2 law firms, one of which is a typical estate planning firm, where estate planning is now more about disability planning than the traditional estate planning. The second law firm that deals with business, tax, and legal, where it's more complicated, and we tend to resolve messes and get to the heart of those relevant matters.
What do you mean by messes? What kind of messes do you can a law firm clean up?
Typically, somebody will come in, and an advisor, an accountant, a CPA, a financial advisor, a life insurance professional, a banker, a bank giving officer, somebody in charity, a friend of theirs will say, you're very confused or frustrated with this situation. It could be an employee situation, a tax situation, something they want to sell, something they want to buy, a concern with a child, a concern with somebody who works for them, a concern for a child that works for them, a concern for what's next in life, a health event, and I have to readjust. Where all of those different things, there isn't an expert for them to get onto. They might have gotten to somebody who didn't do that, but had another agenda. Because of how they get paid.
Right.
And they started down a path, and the client says, this doesn't feel right. So one of their friends or advisors will say, it kind of sounds like you've got a mess. You should see Joe or Steve. And that's as simple as the introduction is. You've got a mess. You should see them. Remember what I said earlier. By that gift of clarity or by that pause or introduction, over half the time when somebody's in front of us, it isn't a problem that we should solve, but we know somebody that would be perfect for it. We know the person that will make that go away. So often a client will have been dealing with something for 6 months to 2 or 3 years, and by 2 days from then, it's all over with. Because they're no longer dealing with symptoms, they're dealing with an underlying issue. Or they have a different insight as to why they're going through it. So maybe it's legal, maybe it's financial, maybe it's tax. It's usually about something around it.
Interesting. So you're listening to Close Up on America's Business, where business, finance, and technology meet. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-hosts Eve Nasby and Urban Miyares. If you want to appear on our show, just email me at bwaxler@barrywaxler.com, and we'll be happy to talk to you and see if we can't get it going. So we're here with our guest, Joe Strazzeri, and Joe is telling us about family of companies that do things that have really helped out a lot of my clients. We've done a lot of wonderful things together, and I think one of the key issues for me is, when I can step back and allow a client to work with, legal counsel that cares about what they do. It opens the doors to a lot of things, whereas, as Joe was mentioning before, so many of us are out there and we have an agenda. We want to get to something because that's something that makes our living for us. But if we step back and allow counsel to get in and work in the right capacity, it opens the doors up to horizons we've never seen before. So anyway, Joe, you work, you have a company called Founders Group, correct?
Yes, that's the fourth of the group.
Okay, because what I wanted to get more information on was, how does Founders Group work? Because it's really teaching business owners how to exit their company, but not necessarily at any given time. Is that correct?
Sure. So what happens, most business owners each year or throughout the year face the decision. And it is either because of their exhaustion at the moment, a success or a failure of that week, and they say, should I, on my decision, keep and grow the business, or should I transition it? And if I transition it, do I transition it in whole or in part, internally to my family or team members, or externally to somebody else? So they're constantly in that decision. In the early days, it's, how do I keep and grow? How do I keep and grow? How do I keep and grow? And during a bad week, gosh, can I get rid of this thing? At the back end, it's, when should I transition? How should I? But this week is good. Let's keep it growing. And often a business owner, their business is part of their soul. When you walk up to somebody who started their own gig, and they talk about who they are, they're as proud of that as often they might be of a family member. It's very important to them. They're proud of the people they've supported, the difference they've made in the world, and the thing they've grown that has supported them and their family over a long period of time. The idea of not being the owner of it, not controlling it, not running it, is scary. It's frustrating.
Sure.
But also, the idea of continuing to have to do this feels like servitude. You're standing there saying, could somebody just stand up there and say thank you?
Yeah.
Because they're often givers who are taking care of others, and they're proud to be that, but they're feeling a little misunderstood or a little underappreciated, and they're doing great things. So again, the decision of, do I keep and grow, or do I transition? And if I transition, all of it or some of it, and to whom? Is that internally to my family or team members, or externally to somebody else? And how does that affect what I do afterwards? Can't tell you the number of business owners I've sat with who then the spouse looks over and says, I want more of your time. And then you ask the spouse, would you like to be the new full-time project? And the spouse looks over and says, no, keep the business.
Oh, my gosh.
I think I've heard you say that about your own family.
That is true. My own wife,
Yes.
we were driving through the wine country with another couple, as my wife was expressing the second of our children would be, in 4 or 5 years, would be going to college, and would I be retiring at that point? And I had said I've worked my life out such that I don't have anything on the list anymore of what I would no longer do if I was retired, or what I'd start doing. Been working on that for a decade. So I don't really have a reason to not do this. And I've got surrounded by great people. And my friend and his wife were talking about, if I'd retire or not, and I expressed not, and my wife was very upset. She was discussing that she really wanted us to spend time together. And it was her girlfriend, Tony, who said that exact comment that started me saying this. Annie, do you want to be his new full-time project? And she said, 20 hours a week sounds really good, Joe.
God bless her.
So tell me a little bit about the team. You have a very good specialized team you work with at Founders Group, correct?
Let me go back. We've been working with business owners for 15 years on this kind of a theory. And we used to address the 7 key elements of a business, and we would modify those to cause the business to be worth more or not. Remember, we grew up as estate and tax attorneys, where the idea was to keep the business in the family. But the industry talks about exit because the industry gets paid on an exit.
Right.
If the business is sold, there is a loan that happens. If the business is sold, there's a percentage on a commission. If the business is sold, there might be an insurance policy. If the business is sold, there's a bunch of cash to manage. So the industry talks about exit, not succession. So the first thing that we dealt with was we were unique because we talked about succession. We were talking about keeping the business and having more money and more time for the owner, and eventually keeping it in the family. So we did a lot of work in that area. Then as time went on, the business owner said, how do we do this with the family? I'm afraid it will blow up if I'm not here. So how do you standardize what that uniqueness is about the entrepreneur that started it to where the business doesn't fall apart as they back away? Because most businesses are driven by someone's personality at first. So how do you transition? Because junior or the head executive is going to do it differently, but it might be just as good. It might serve the world's purpose. It might be just as profitable, or it might be a little less, and is that okay? Let's hope it isn't because of a health concern that they have to be gone. As we went through that, we found some of our business owners then bringing in the next generation, and over half of those, the next generation said, I watched you do this, and I watched our quality of life not be as good, and I'm now in it, and now my family's experiencing it. Can we just sell it so we have the money and I don't have to work in it? The business owner who started, the entrepreneur, gets hurt, and now has to start to consider, maybe my family is the wrong choice. Maybe it's my son-in-law that's a better choice. Maybe we should create a cash cow with a professional organization. So then it became transitioning maybe outside the family. That changed the conversation for us. Again, the industry has always talked about exit. We just consider exit to be one of the possibilities. I'm going to speak at a family office event later this week. And at that family office event, everybody on my panel talks about hiring professionals to run your family business, and the family should disassociate from the business. I'm going to be the only one on the panel suggesting that the family business serves more than just making money. It may have other reasons to exist. It might be about employing somebody who otherwise couldn't. It might be about a mission, about having that business in that community because the community would collapse if not. Reasons other than just financial benefit. I'll be the only one up there. I may get tarred and feathered, but family businesses deserve to be in existence for reasons other than driving cash flow. Cash flow is important, and then driving equity is important, but there may be other reasons for the family.
Yeah, somehow I haven't seen you tarred and feathered yet. I don't think it's going to start anytime soon. So this is Close Up on America's Business, where business, finance, and technology meet. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, with my co-hosts Eve Nasby and Urban Miyares, and our guest host, Mr. Joe Strazzeri. We'll be right back after this short break. We're back. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with the always energetic and bubbly Eve Nasby, the always incredible Urban Miyares, and our guest host today is Mr. Joe Strazzeri, somebody that I've admired and worked with for many years, and it has been actually a blessing in my career. So
I adore him.
Yep.
He's amazing.
So,
and from personal experience, he is that man that puts the cookies on the bottom shelf so that even a young, budding entrepreneur like myself can actually know what I'm doing and give good direction. And I think, Joe, one of the things that I admire most about you is that you do 90% of the listening and 10% of the talking when we're together. And so I think that that's one of the qualities of a good advisor, a good tax person, a good attorney, a good professional. But I would ask you, Joe, as our listeners out there have people like you in their lives, and maybe they're looking to make a change, what would you say that they should be looking for in someone who carries the profession that you do? What are some of the top qualities of folks that do what you do?
When you're dealing with a successful family or a business owner, that business owner or a person in that family should probably look back as they're looking at their accountant, their financial advisor, their attorney, their banker, etc. And are they accessing those people for pieces of advice for a situation in a vacuum? They give the data, that person takes only half the data, and then gives a piece of the answer in the vacuum? Or instead, is that professional asking for questions to the right and the left of the situation, and then including other professionals, the other people in their life? So if you're getting A, you're giving some data, and the person's saying, I know the solution, do this. That's probably not as good. If, on the other hand, you're interacting with a professional, accountant, attorney, financial advisor, whichever it is, and you're saying, I've got this problem. If they're asking you questions to the right and the left of it, and they're saying, let's get somebody else on the phone or in a meeting too, and let's talk through it, we're going to need this much more data, and then talk through it, you're probably in the right place.
Excellent.
interesting. So let's talk about some of the events that you have coming up, because what I love about your firm is that you share your knowledge, you share your experience and what have you, and we've got some great events coming up here. So tell us a little bit about what's going
on. For business owners, every first Thursday of the month, except in December because we go dark, every first Thursday of the month we have something called Community Insights, where in the morning time we have a presentation on succession. What is it to consider succession of your business? Whether, again, it's to keep and grow, or it's to sell in whole or in part, internal or external, like we talked about. And the internal might be to your family or employees. We have a presentation and it rotates on 3 different subjects, so each month, that talks about that succession and things to consider and the process for it. That gets into the nuts and bolts of, should it be an ESOP? Should it be something else? Should it be to my family? What's the process to go through? How is evaluation important? So that program revolves around this idea. Most succession plans or most exit plans are something on the order of, give me your financials, let me recast your EBITDA, and let me assess where you should be on the multiple range to give you a value. And although that's kind of okay to buy-sell insurance, or to consider with partners what you might want to think about value, on a sale, it's useless. At the end of the day, there's going to be a financial person who's going to run through your books and run through evaluation, find the problems of the books, find the add-backs or not, find risk, and try to drive the lowest value for you to get for your business. Why not get that quality of evaluation up front, find out where somebody's going to drive your value down because of risk, and solve for it before you sell it.
Yep.
Because in a 6 to 18 month period of time, you can change that EBITDA, but you can change the multiple, and moving the needle on the multiple is exponentially more valuable on what you get out of the business, and it becomes more rewarding. Oddly enough, if you're going to keep the business, or if you're going to transfer it to the next generation or to people on your team, you've made it more stable, and it'll have a bigger cash flow and more likely for success. So doing it with a true valuation up front is more valuable whether you're going to keep or you're going to sell. Most of the industry drives to exit under just like somebody selling your home. They don't want the most value for a home. They want to flip the most houses.
Right.
They want to sell the most houses. Why treat your one business like that?
Goes back to the agenda you talked about earlier on the show. Is everybody has an agenda to do things, while the business owner really needs guidance on how to set things up to begin with.
Everybody wants to talk to me about how do I avoid the taxes, how do I get the bigger net number, and although those are valuable conversations, how about if I could increase the value of business 20 or 30% to absorb most of that tax?
Right.
So again, though, we're more motivated in driving the higher value because I would love to be with the client long term. We're less concerned about how many deals can happen at a time.
Right.
But again, when looking at your advisors, as he was talking about earlier, what was the one thing? And I mentioned the one thing. My second thing would be always remember the advice you're getting is from the person that gets compensated in a particular way. Could that be skewing the advice?
Right.
And if the advice drives down how they get compensated, that might be correct, but you probably need another opinion.
Right.
Because there are multiple ways to take care of these things.
Right.
Good point.
Interesting. Yeah, it goes back. So many people look at things on an economic basis versus a value basis, and I always compare that back in the days. For those of us that follow professional football, the football teams were complaining about losing $5 or $10 million a year back some years back. If you're losing $5 or $10 million a year, why do you stay in business, right? Well, the reality was they may have been losing $5 or $10 million in revenue, okay, but they were gaining $50 million in value on those teams. So why wouldn't I stay in business on that? So anyway, so Joe, we're starting to get close here. Let's talk about some of the events and how do people find information or register to come to your events?
Sure. So a couple of things. Southern California Institute puts on a lot of this programming. So that's at SC for Southern California, scinstitute.org, scinstitute.org. You'll find things like community insights as you dig around. There's also usually a highlighted or a featured event. The next featured event is our California Forum to lay solutions for family businesses that we partner with the San Diego Business Journal to put on. That's going to be on June 21st, and it is one of many different types that we do like that. There are going to be 18 presenters over a whole day-long program. The program is for advisors to business owners, but there'll be advisors, business owners in the audience. In October, we do a similar program where we have an award ceremony for San Diego business owners on who is the most prepared for succession, as rated by San Diego business owners, so each other, and that have taken a survey to say how prepared they are themselves. So there are many different programs that we put on to where they're either inexpensive or no cost for people to get language and tools and advice and introductions to others that do this. And we belong to a much larger ecosystem, and that larger ecosystem has a variety of attorneys, accountants, financial advisors, bankers, M&A professionals that you can meet at these events. It isn't just about making sure that they all work with one person or another. It's that advisors and business owners and families realize that there's a spectrum of great people out there.
And I think it's important for our listeners to know that you are so generous. This organization is just not all about themselves. Your generous contributions to this community, to organizations within this community are just incredible. And you have a gala every year. I think last year or 2 years ago was a Roaring 20s or something like that I was privileged to. That was fun. That was fun. And I think that's important for listeners to know that you are an organization that is so benevolent and so giving. And it's because, Joe, of your heart. You have a beautiful heart. So we adore you. We love you. Thank you for all you do for this community.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've noticed since my affiliation with the firm is that it's never about me. Mm-hmm. It's always about us, or as Joe likes to call it, it's the we generation, right?
Our we-driven mindset offers a different theory to collaboration, where best-in-class gets to come in and people are empowered with, they don't need to know all the answers, they know who to call. Shelley, who runs the Southern California Institute, fields probably 2 or 3 calls a day where somebody says, I've got a client or a friend in this situation. I know that I ran into, who was that person who gave the presentation 2 years ago or last summer or at the gathering last year, where we're making that connection.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. So we have Community Insights coming up on...
First Thursdays of the month.
First Thursday, so that would be June 7th.
July 5th.
Right. And that's going to be in La Jolla this time, isn't it?
Yes. So we typically do them at Marriott's. I'm a Marriott boy.
So we love those points.
Sure. Well, that's one reason. I love the service as well.
Yeah.
We put them on at the Marriott in La Jolla, on La Jolla Drive, and the Marriott in Carmel Valley of San Diego, down off El Camino Realish. And it gives us the opportunity to allow people to come in without an obligation to hear about what it's about exit planning. And we often partner with advisors who may do a program right before or right after it in the room that's adjacent. So it's a nice way for all us to collaborate and for business owners to get good information. Oddly, business owners are great first thing in the morning, because I don't know about you guys, but as the day goes on, my day gets stolen by the disasters of the news and the love of all the people around me. But I know if I can go to something at 7:30 or 8:30 in the morning, I can make that appointment for sure.
Yes.
The rest of the day is subject to whose frustration is the greatest that needs to be taken care of. I'm an entrepreneur like everyone else.
Yeah.
Hopefully I've surrounded myself by a fabulous team that allows us to take the time. But I know it's just like my working out. If I do it first thing in the morning, I get to go. When it comes to my business, if I do something first thing in the morning to be able to work on my business rather than in it, I do it.
Yeah. So, and you also have an event that goes on at the same locations in the afternoon. You bring in the more of an individual type program, for the estate planning for.
Sure. That is one of our law firms, California Estate and Elder Law, deals with estate planning and elder law planning, disability planning. So traditional estate planning, as you know it, with that addition. Each first Thursday of the month in the afternoon at that same hotel, we put on a program, and it's a change of topics. Often it's the new form of estate planning, why disability planning should change your trust. It may be a program on the new tax law, your B trust isn't appropriate for you anymore. Or why most estate plans fail with the diagnosis is dementia. So subjects like that, where people say, wait a minute, my estate plan that I've got in place was perfect years ago, but with the change of dynamic that we now have with 60, 70, 80, 90-year-olds and what's happening to them, we no longer are avoiding the boogeyman of probate or of estate tax because of the change in laws and because the other circumstances that affect that. That's a smaller concern. The larger concern is, what if I'm disabled before I pass away? And I'm not able to control my assets, how does that work? What is the financial devastation from it? What is the dynamic of having people in control or not? I want to be, and I want to stay at home, and I want to be taken care of at home, and I want to be put somewhere. But how does that all work? And that's driving. The estate planning documents now are more about the last quarter of your life than they are about what to distribute after. So that's what those programs are about.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That's fabulous. So if anybody, any of our listeners want to get more information on this, we can go to scinstitute.org. Is that right?
Sir.
Okay. And, of course, if you have any problem finding it, just call me, Barry Waxler, at 619-295-5920, extension 22, and I will guide you in the right direction. And this has been a fun show, guys. So
love Joe Struzzieri.
Yeah, well, you know what?
He's the golden child.
You know what?
Awesome.
I'm a fan of everybody at the table here, so I think we've all done well, and I'm just happy that we're all back together again.
That's okay, Barry. We'll love on you next.
I'll leave that one alone. So anyway, well, listen, guys, I appreciate it. We've gotten a good tour of business. We're going to do a lot more of that in the weeks to come, and we're going to get Joe has a fabulous partner that helps run everything while Joe's off doing
whatever it is Joe
Joe does.
Right? So we'll grab Shelley Lightfoot and bring her in here one of these
She's
weeks.
Great.
And
She
get her
is
going
great.
too,
She's a fireball.
Yep.
She's the ever-ready bunny.
Yes. So, and she loves reading my long emails, too. So, anyway. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
it's
thanks,
been a
Barry.
great show. So, you've been listening to Close Up on America's Business, the show that brings business, finance, and technology together to make a positive impact in our community. If you want to be a guest on our show, call me at 619-295-5920, extension 22, or just shoot me an email at bwaxler@barrywaxler.com. It's been a fun show. Join us again next week for more Close Up, and thank you for listening.